Hey, good evening. Welcome to A Foreigner in the Philippines. And I was looking at the comment that was made by one of our subscribers. I guess an ex-subscriber now, possibly. And she said that my use of the phrase "the Filipino way" offended her. She thought that it was in some way derogatory or degrading or something, and she admonished me, said that it was the second time that I'd used it. So I'm not quite sure what she expected me to do with that, but I thought that I would talk about what the Filipino way means to me. Now, the Filipino way is the way that Filipinos deal with things, and that's open to any kind of observation, conclusion, opinions, in exactly the same way that Filipinos will look at foreigners and make some kind of a judgment as to what their way is. Now, we've had demonstrated to us before what Filipinos think of as the foreigner's way, and the foreigner's way, as far as I've been able to ascertain, is trouble. If you don't come up with the goods for a foreigner, there'll be trouble, right? So how did we find this out professionally, on a professional basis? While I was working, this was when I first was working on the house that I built, and I built it out of metal stud, and I didn't wear goggles. I didn't wear safety glasses, as they're called, and because I didn't wear safety glasses, that as you may know, with metal stud, you're drilling with a metal bit into a metal piece. That's the stud, and obviously, well, not so obviously, we try to kid ourselves on these things and not take the adequate precautions, which is exactly what I did or didn't do, right? So I got some tiny little flecks of metal in my eye. I mean, and I'm talking about very, very tiny little dots of the metal went into my eye, several pieces. I just thought, I got something in my eye. Can you have a look, Beth, and see if you can get it out? And so we tried, and we tried the usual thing of getting a tissue, and just it didn't work. So, cut a long story short, we went to the local optician in town, in Talabon, and we said what we thought had happened, or actually at that time we didn't really know that they were little bits of metal, and the optician very kindly put us on his little machine where he could actually look very closely at the eyeball, and then he said, "You've got some pieces of metal in there. Okay, can you take it out?" I said, "What?" And then he explained, as an aside to Beth, he said, "Look, just speaking frankly and honestly, I could take this out, and I could do it easily." He said, "But he's a foreigner, and if I were to make the slightest mistake, he would have the resources to take me to court and bring a case against me, and probably would win if it was my mistake." So he said, "I prefer not to do it." So we then assured him, "No, this is not going to happen. Please, can you take the thing out?" And he said, I'm really sorry to refuse, but I just can't do it." He said, "But if you go to Tagbilaran and you go to," and he recommended the place that we could go, and the clinic that we could go to, which is what we did, but that was in Tagbilaran, and that was 3 agonizing hours driving for me with something in my eye. I don't know whether you've ever had anything in your eye that simply won't come out, but the eye, it's streaming with water to keep it lubricated, I guess. That's the body's way of doing it. And so it was it was most unpleasant, most unpleasant. When we got there, it was a clinic that obviously probably had all the insurances and everything, and they treated me, and I paid a reasonable price. I wasn't unhappy with the price. I think it cost me about 1,000 pesos, which together with 1,000 or 2,000 in expenses, it wasn't so bad as it was for a cure for my own stupidity. Now, if ever I do that kind of work, I always wear glasses. Once you've been bitten, then you're afraid after that. So I always wear, and I encourage others to do the same. But it illustrates the attitude that people have towards the expat way, the foreigner's way. Now, I've heard other examples where I've been stood in line and a foreigner doesn't get quite what he's expecting. He's not understood properly, so he starts very quickly to lose their temper. Foreigners lose their temper very, very quickly, and this is what you could call the foreigner's way. They operate closer to being angry. And we have a saying in English, which is the squeaky wheel gets the attention. In other words, it's a metaphor for if you had a squeaky wheel, you would oil it. And what happens if you go and you dramatize the squeaky wheel syndrome, then people will rush around and just get you the hell out of their hair. And that's what happens. That's what foreigners seem to think is the best way to do it. Now, how does this differ, and how does that bring us to the Filipino way, which was so offensive to this lady that I'm sure she probably doesn't even watch our channel again. The Filipino way to me is non-confrontational, non-squeaky wheel. I've been in a line at the ATM where somebody has come up and gone straight to the front of the line. Nobody in the line, and I'm talking about a line with 7 or 8 or 9 or possibly 10 people, including myself, that were waiting. And this person, this particular person came up, and she had a security guard who was dressed in paramilitary gear, and he had the shotgun. And he came up with her, and they went straight to the front of the queue. I went up and spoke to her. Nobody else did. I went up and I very politely said, "Excuse me, ma'am, can you explain to me why you would think it was okay to go to the front of the line?" And then I looked back and I indicated that there were people in the line that would probably be in the line for another 30 or 40 minutes, going on the idea that it takes about 5 minutes for the average person to deal with their ATM action. She said, "Well, it's because I have somewhere to go and it's urgent." And she explained it, and I said, well, actually, I have somewhere to go, and I'm sure that all of these people that are waiting also have somewhere to go, and people waiting for them, and appointments, and just things to do. Now, thankfully, the security guard with his shotgun, as soon as I came up and politely started to talk to the lady, he withdrew and just backed off and had nothing to do with the conversation, was not menacing or anything. Eventually, during the conversation, the woman said, "Look, I'm sorry, I'll just leave it and come back another time." So I said, "Well, thank you." And then I stepped back in line. Now, I hadn't done the squeaky wheel thing. I didn't go up and start shouting. Whereas another time that I was in the line, and behind me was another foreigner, and somebody did the same thing again. And I can't remember whether it was me that said, well, ma'am, there's a big line, you know. But what the lady did was she came up to the woman that was 2 in front of me and said, do you mind if I go ahead of you? Never mind all of the rest of us, which was another 6, 7, 8 or 9 or 10 people once again. Anyway, that was all handled, but the foreigner behind me was very loud, was insulting, was angry, and that's what I think of as the foreigner way. So having put that as the way that foreigners tend to deal with things which become inconvenient, right? Look at the Filipino way. Now, the Filipino way is just to get through the day with the least amount of aggravation. That's how I see it. That's what George Burns, the American comedian, said when he was asked, George, how have you got to such a ripe old age? He was well into his 80s, without, and yet seemed to be so free and easy and happy. And he said, my policy is to get through each and every day with the least amount of aggravation possible. And that seems to be the Filipino way to me. Now, foreigners criticize this, so that's maybe why my subscriber decided to take offense at my using the phrase the Filipino way. The Filipino way to me is a much happier way to get through the day. If you go, as so many expats, so many foreigners do, and you have a war following you, which is fairly obvious by your body language and the way you talk, if you do that, then you actually have war around you. You have war, you are angry. I know of someone who, the Filipinos that I spoke to in a particular store, they called him the angry American. And this has been reiterated on other occasions when I've spoken to other people that have had reason to offer their services and experience the war. Filipinos have an incredible, admirable way in their Filipino way of getting through the day with a smile. Now, I think of the Filipino way as being using the currency of a smile. As soon as you speak, in my experience, as soon as you speak to a Filipino, they're very likely to smile. Now, if it's a woman, that doesn't mean that they're calling their mother to turn the bed sheets down so that you can go and enjoy some quality time. And if it's a man, it doesn't mean that he's too afraid of you that you might smack him one and he'll go home and cry to his mother. It doesn't mean any of that. It means that they have matured, to my way of thinking, so that days are not filled with arguments. When the other people in those 2 or 3 cases that I'm talking about and thinking about, where someone has butted in at the front of the queue. Now, what's the Filipino way which is being demonstrated? The Filipino way is that they look at it, see perhaps another couple of minutes on their wait, and say, it's not worth aggravation. It's not worth making a scene. It's just 2 minutes. Why would I make a scene? And that is the sane way of looking at it. So, my friend, if you are looking at this now, and are surprised that that's what I think of as the Filipino way, you may be thinking about how foreigners often say, well, Filipinos, they won't speak up for themselves. They won't. Another expat had problems at the bank, and he went in, and as soon as he went in, he started to raise his voice, something that Filipinos don't seem to do. You won't get Filipinos making their case or their complaint by raising their voice. Now, probably most foreigners will do that, and what there is that there's a case for embarrassment there. By embarrassing other people and by raising your voice, you bring attention of those around you to your situation, and you embarrass the person that you are complaining to. Let's say you've gone into the bank, something hasn't gone right, and you start to say, well, is this how you treat all of your... And the person, whether it is a teller or somebody who is a special services, maybe a notary public, or the manager or the assistant manager, they really don't want this. And so you are likely to be quickly handled and gotten out the door. And I had somebody once say to me that he had complained by getting the phone number by insisting on the phone number of the establishment that he was at, that he regularly goes to, an eating place, and he insisted on the phone by doing exactly what we've been talking about, the foreigner way, raising his voice, embarrassing everybody, and intimidating. He got the phone number, he called the person, and he complained. And the person at the other end said, let me speak to the manager there. And then he had a private word to the manager. Now, as soon as the manager got off the phone, they dealt with this foreigner as quickly and as efficiently as possible. And so he got his way. So that proved the squeaky wheel, didn't it? And actually it didn't. What it did is it proved that if you go and there is a war coming behind you when you complain, you are going to be treated as someone that they simply don't want in their establishment. Now, as far as he was concerned, he proved his point by saying, whenever I go in now, they treat me like a prince. He said, I'm treated like a king. As soon as I go in, they seem to see me. They send a manager out straight away. He takes my order, and then they go in and they make sure that the order is quickly and efficiently done. Said they treat me like a king. I wanted to say, actually they're not treating you like a king, they're treating you like an a-hole, because that's how you behaved. Now, Filipinos don't do this. They will quietly judge the worth of making a complaint even, and they will handle it that way. Beth and I went into a McDonald's when we went to Cebu, and we went into a McDonald's and we made an order. This was quite a month or so ago, and we made an order, and when the order came, it was with rice instead of fries, and so we then made another order. Well, can we have, this is the wrong order. No shouting, no being loud, no squeaky wheel. We just said, can you come over? The order is wrong. Can we we need fries. We don't want the rice. We're fries. Oh, okay. So they went away, and now in the States, I know that if an order is really wrong and you do complain, then quite possibly, instead of bringing, say, a regular fries, they would bring a large fries and maybe an apple pie if it's a good restaurant, and say, very sorry about that, sir. We've given you an apple pie as well on the house. And you would get whatever was wrong would be there free of charge. Well, we made our complaint very lightly, and they soon came with another order, but it was a complete order with everything over and again. And of course I said, well, we really don't want all of this. All that we wanted was the fries. We eventually accepted what was there, and me thinking that this was the American way, that we would get it free, and we didn't. We paid for it, and Beth said, let's just pay. And we paid. Now, I know that the expats that are watching this, I know that the foreigners that are watching this would say, you should have refused, you should have done this, you should have made a fuss, you should have made a scene, should have made a stink, all of those various comments. But we didn't. We had a peaceful meal, we had a pleasant meal, there was too much food, which we'd paid for, but there was no fuss, and when we walked out, we weren't arguing, not against each other, but between each other. Did you see the guy, how he did this and how he did that? Nothing gets me more. I hate that one. We didn't do any of that. Actually, by the time we'd finished eating, we'd forgotten all about it. We paid and we forgot about it. Doesn't that seem to be a better way? Well, that's the Filipino way. The Filipino way, when you confront, as I do with the Superman team, and they have to do something, there's no fuss. If you go and you say, this is wrong, can you take it down, and can you do it, it's done. No fuss, no complaining, no attributing blame, where I say, well, you know, if it was in between foreigners, I guarantee that you would have to justify the fact that you wanted it moved, because they would say, well, hold on a minute, Terence, you did say that that was where you wanted it, and we've done it. So, are you with me? So there will be blame attached. I don't find, maybe it's because I don't speak the language, and so I really don't understand what's happening sometimes, but I don't feel any sorting and assigning the blame. And that's the Filipino way. For me, it's wonderful. And so, in using the term Filipino way, it's actually pointing to a better way in my mind. This is a foreigner in the Philippines. Bye for now. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. And if you don't feel that you can subscribe, even though it doesn't cost anything to subscribe, and it doesn't cost anything to have a subscription, it's free. Even if you don't feel inclined to do that, at least give us a thumbs up. How about a thumbs up? Bye for now.